Hi everybody, welcome to my channel, Life Law Bin. Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. I have with me a friend, her name is Juliet Osborne. We are both colleagues on the bar course, so we're course mates. And today I have Juliet with us to talk about the Graduate Diploma in Law, the GDL. Now, just a bit of background about Juliet. She has a keen interest in practicing criminal law and public law, and she's currently working with a public lawyer as a paralegal, doing some work on unlawful strip searches in female prisons. Now, anybody that knows the bar course and knows how hectic it is, we do know that Julia is doing something amazing. She has amazing time management skills because the course is actually very, very, very hectic. So Juliet, thank you so much for joining us and finding the time to do this, because I know we're currently amidst preparations for our assessments. So thank you.
That's
Now,
okay, yeah.
yeah, thanks a lot. Now, the first thing I wanted to ask you, and this is for the purpose of our viewers who might not know what the GDL is, what is the GDL?
So GDL stands for Graduate Diploma in Law. Essentially what it is a conversion course. So you can, if you've got a degree before the GDL, before doing the GDL, it will convert essentially your degree into a law degree. So it's kind of a fast track to getting a law degree once you've already achieved a degree.
Yeah, and I think that's helpful because you've already went through you went through a period of schooling, and you definitely want the next stage to be fast tracked if you definitely can. Now, what was the nature of your first degree and any previous work experience?
So I did my degree quite a long time ago now. I started in 2006 and finished it in 2009. It was a degree in anthropology, which, for those that don't know, is a study of humans, not ants, because some people ask if it's a study of ants. And yeah, I loved it, but the problem with anthropology is it's kind of in a way it is a vocational thing as well, and you kind of have to go on and do the masters and do the PhD. And at the time I didn't have the resources to go and do that. So what I did was I finished that degree in 2009 and basically went straight into work, and I worked for the most part in the financial services dealing with anti-money laundering, which could be interesting, but it sounds more interesting than it actually is.
Oh, wow. Wow. Now, how did we move from studying anthropology to doing some work in anti-money laundering to law? Why did you choose to study law?
So law has always been an interest for sure. So when I was younger, like it's kind of the familiar story. Like I was very interested in crime, would read a lot of crime novels, and law was potentially going to be my first degree. But the truth is, I didn't really study hard enough in school, and I didn't get the grades to go and do law initially. And so I chose something else, which obviously I found really interesting, but I still kind of maintained that background interest in law. And it was while I was doing the money laundering, anti-money laundering stuff, not money laundering. And like there's an element of crime to that as well,
Yeah.
which kind of keeps the interest ticking over in the background. But also while I was doing that, I think it was in around 2015, and I don't know if you've heard of the podcast Serial. It's basically a podcast about this guy called Adnan Syed, who is in prison for the murder of his high school girlfriend. I think it was in 1999. And I just got so interested in that, just like completely wrapped up in it. And then I sort of sought out other podcasts that went into more of a deep dive about that story, and about essentially how actually doesn't look like that he committed the crime at all, and he's been in prison for, you know, going on 20 years now for a crime that we don't think he committed. So that was what really piqued my interest in appeals. Couple of years after that, I completely lost interest in what I was doing in the anti-money laundering in the banks. Found it quite a soulless sort of environment. And so I went off traveling, which is the same old story. A lot of people do it. I traveled around the Caribbean, and
You have some experience with Carnival.
oh yeah, love it. And South America as well. And then I came back, and I desperately didn't want to go back into the financial services. So what I did was I started a bakery business. Did that for a year. Yeah, did that for a year. I mean, it was all right, but what it was a stall, and that's it. It was in Waterloo in London, and that's not particularly enjoyable in the winter.
In cold.
Very cold, very, very cold. And like sometimes when it would rain, you know, you'd have like a river running through your tent. So yeah, so I did that for a year, and then I was like, right, I need to get my act together. And so I went back into the financial services for a year, because the end game was to apply for the GDL and to do the GDL. So I needed to earn some money and get ready to do that. And yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
But long and the short of it is, it was the podcast really that kind of piqued my interest in the appeals and made me think, you know, this is something that I would really, really be interested in doing.
And here we are. Juliet, you know what? I'm going to say this on behalf of the rest of our course mates. How dare you not bring baked goods for us?
I don't have time, Nia.
I do know you don't. We do know you don't have any time, but I had to make sure I threw in that little teaser for you. So, you know, after exams, we're waiting to bite into those lovely baked goods, Juliet. Don't waste time. Yeah. But what I have noticed though is that you're bringing a wealth of experience to the law, and that is something that we do see all the time. They want three-dimensional people that have been into the world, have engaged and embraced other experiences. Ultimately, it helps you to serve clients better. So I think you're coming to the law with a wealth of experience in different aspects, you know, coming with your different interests. And I think at the end of the day, that's an asset. Now let's talk about the GDL. So you finally enrolled. Now, what can people expect? What are the core modules? Is it fast paced?
So the core modules are contract, criminal, tort, public, EU, land. How many is that?
Equity. Is that
equity?
Yeah.
I think they're is that 7? That should be 7.
7.
And then we also had obviously an ethics module, and you had the choice of so in the second term you have the choice between doing a kind of more commercially focused module or going it alone and doing a research module, which is essentially a dissertation module. I went for that because I have no interest in business. But yeah, is it fast paced? I personally didn't find it too bad. I know that other people have different experiences, but I think if you manage your time well, I worked 1 day a week while I was doing the GDL, and I think if you manage your time well, it is doable. It's really easily doable. I mean, obviously, if you're working a bit more than that, then I think you'd find it more difficult. But yeah, I found I had more than enough time, and it didn't overwhelm me. I still had time to like kick back, watch all of the rubbish on TV that I watch. So yeah.
No, could you describe the adjustment? Because obviously you were coming from a non-legal background,
Yeah.
so we do expect you to you had to engage in some kind of legal jargon. You had to be introduced to it. How was
Yeah.
that? Could you describe the adjustment?
Yeah, so it was an interesting one because I really, and it to be honest is a bit shameful, because actually when I started the GDL, I knew very little about kind of the way Parliament and the legal system was set up in the UK. I knew actually quite a bit more about the way it was all set up in the US because of just things, just where my interests lay with, the death penalty and appeal stuff that I had just naturally become interested in and done a bit of research on. But yeah, embarrassingly, I didn't know much about all of this in the UK, and it took some learning. And yeah, it was a difficult adjustment. But once you get your head around it, once you understand it, and I think that's the key. You have to really put your mind to it, and then once you've got your head around it, I think you're good.
Yeah, I think we also need to give ourselves time to make that adjustment, because
Yeah.
law students, even when you first embark on the LLB that first year, you struggle with reading judgments. Everyone thinks it's just, typical English language, but some of the language is dense and
Mm-hmm.
complicated to get your head around. So I think you have to give yourself a little bit of time just to adjust, make that legal adjustment and understand the jargon as well. Now, where did
Yeah.
you study the GDL, and why did you make that choice?
I studied it in Leeds at the University of Law. Why did I make that choice? I didn't want to do it in London because it was more expensive. Um, and I had some friends in Leeds and in York, and I just thought, why not make a change? I still had, so obviously the good thing about having worked for several years is that I had bought myself a flat in London. And so, yeah, that's kind of given me the breathing space in terms of money. And yeah, so I just thought, let's move out of London, because you never know, London might not be for me. Not sure yet. But yeah, and I decided to move to Leeds. Love Leeds. It's been really nice. Everyone's really friendly. So yeah, and ULaw was good as well.
Yes, because you still are at ULaw doing the bar course, so you must have loved it. So
Yeah, I mean, I kind of heard some, well, I don't know if we can say this. I quite like the ULaw culture. I think
yeah,
is nice.
yeah, I quite enjoy it. I think the teaching is great so far on the bar course. I have no complaints at all.
Mhm.
I do know though, in terms of the GDL, I know that some persons do it in a year and some do it in 2 years. Now,
Yeah.
what's the difference? Does it just boil down to your preference, or is the difference in content?
I don't think it's different in content. I think you do your modules in a slightly different order.
Okay.
So first term was criminal, public, EU, and ethics, and then you did the contract and everything else after Christmas. But yeah, over the 2 years, obviously it'd be a bit more spaced out. And to be honest, that might be a good idea if people wanted to work alongside it, kind of on a more regular basis. I think that's it really. It just gives you a bit more time.
Yeah, it seems similar to the bar course, because similarly, we can do it in 1 year, or you can do it part-time and do it for 2 years. So maybe it sounds as though we all do the same areas. We all have to cover the same areas. But I think it was also to your preference and how you want to apply yourself as well,
Yeah.
taking into account your personal circumstances.
Definitely.
Now, what was the nature of the coursework like, getting back into school and seeing, okay, we have some deadlines?
So in terms of actual deadlines, there was only at ULaw, there was only an essay. In the first term, it was only an essay that was due, and that was for ethics. I found it really difficult, obviously, getting back into academic writing. Although bizarrely, I did really well in that essay. But you know, I was pretty much going into it blind, had no idea what I was doing. It was my first time using like legal citations and things like that. But yeah, so it was only one piece of coursework, wasn't particularly long. And then in the second term, you had your elective, or I had my elective of the dissertation, and that was only about, I think, 4,500 words, and you got to choose your title for that from a list of about 100 titles. So that was good. There was some interesting subject matter there. So yeah, it was only a couple of pieces of coursework.
Okay. Now, some persons compare the LLB to the GDL, and they may ask, why the GDL over the LLB, or why the LLB over the GDL. Do you think that the GDL exposed you to the legal framework as much as an LLB would have?
I wouldn't have thought so, to be honest. I mean, first of all, you've got the fact that the GDL is only over 1 year, whereas the LLB is 3. I imagine that there are, I mean, to be honest, I don't know much about the LLB, but I imagine that there would be kind of a lot more elective modules, things like that. And you just got more time to do things on the side, like mooting and things like that, and just getting involved with other stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty jam-packed year, and you're very much kind of looking at I won't say the basics of the law, but the real fundamental stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like the nuts and bolts, getting
Yeah.
to grips with it. No,
Yeah.
I did the LLB, so I do know what you mean in terms of you may have more of an opportunity to volunteer, get involved in mooting, get involved in a lot more extracurricular activities. Now, a lot of LLB students chill out for the first year because we know that it doesn't count to the end of the degree. But I imagine from the time you step foot into the GDL program, you need to get down to business because everything is going to count. Now, you even mentioned ethics on the GDL program. I wasn't introduced to ethics until the bar course.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I was never introduced to ethics. I don't know if that's something that maybe other law schools do, but so far, well, my friends that pursue the LLB as well at different universities, I haven't really heard of us being introduced to ethics. So it's quite interesting, and it's quite good that y'all are introduced to ethics before even going on to the LPC or the bar course, So I think that's quite helpful. In terms of electives, yeah, we do have choices in third year. So you do the core or the fundamentals in first and second. Some universities allow you a choice of one or two alongside your core modules. But I think maybe both systems, both the GDL and the LLB, have their advantages. So, I mean, if you're looking for a year to just choose stuff, get to grips with your personal choices, then the LLB sounds as though it has a little bit more flexibility. But if you are a bit unsure, or you think, because I definitely do think there is a key place for the GDL, because I do notice that in certain aspects of the law, they like you to come with that background knowledge. So for example, I think certain areas like intellectual property and certain real niche areas, they love persons to have a background in something else other than law. So if you have a first degree in that specific area, then it's really helpful. I think one of our course mates, she has a first degree in genetic engineering, and I think that's going to be very helpful when she applies for pupillage, because if there are any other persons who have that interest but don't have the background that she has, we wouldn't have that expert knowledge in that specific area, you know?
Exactly.
So I think there is a real place for the GDL as well.
I
Now,
think
what
so.
advice? Yeah, pardon me. Sorry, Juliet.
No, I was going to say, I think so. And I think particularly for people who are looking for that career change, I think once you've got kind of a background of something else behind you, and you just want to, and you, for whatever reason, decide to go into the law, I think it's just a really convenient way of doing it.
Very, very. And also, because I know people tend to look at the clock as well, the timing to do it. It's a lot more convenient to get something done in a year than tell yourself, oh, dear, actually have to sit there for 3 years waiting until I get this certification or this qualification. Now, what advice would you give to students who are currently pursuing the GDL?
So there's probably a couple of things. I think for me, in terms of revision, I just found it incredibly helpful to work with someone else. And I had basically a study buddy called Abby, and we just did all of our revision together. And it's just good to be able to bounce your ideas off each other and to really kind of nail down those more complex issues, like having a discussion about it and making sure that you fully understand the issues. Because I think the thing is that, especially on the GDL, if you're completely new to the law, there are some ideas that are a bit abstract, and you really need to make sure that you understand them, because when they come up in exam, you can't make it up. You need to have that understanding, and understanding is so key. So having the study buddy was really helpful for me. The other thing, I think, just make sure that you take some time out, because it can be intense. There is a lot of reading, but it is doable. So it's doable, and you can still have a life. So make sure you do still have a life. I think, that would probably be my advice. Like, don't get too bogged down in the studying.
Don't get too bogged down. How many hours do you think they should be putting in a week?
40.
40.
So like your full working week, I would say.
Okay. Someone somewhere is cringing hearing that. But unfortunately / fortunately, that's what comes with the job. When deciding to undertake anything to do with law, you have to like reading, and you have to just know that you have to put in that time if you want to be successful. Now, Jules, I know that we mentioned that you're currently on the bar course. You actually sit across from me in the class.
Although we are always on our advocacy stuff together.
Yes, we always have our advocacy together, which is helpful, which is very helpful. But what really piqued my interest is that you're actually working as a paralegal as well. Would you like to share some information about your current work?
Yeah, so what I'm doing at the moment is working with a public lawyer. He's based in London. He's actually a solicitor advocate rather than a barrister. Not that I'm sure that really makes much difference, to be honest. But so he, for a long time, has been working with prisons in the UK, or not working with them, suing prisons in the UK for conducting unlawful strip searches on women. And he actually got a Supreme Court judgment in his favour a couple of years ago, which basically said that these government prisons can't outsource their human rights obligations. So yeah, that's really interesting, and he's still basically doing this work because for some reason the prisons are still unlawfully strip searching women inmates. So yeah, I met him while I was working on my stall in London, and he came for a slice of rum cake, and he was very yeah, he was like, I want some rum cake, because he saw my sign, and I was like, sure. And that was my first meeting with him. And then we didn't really keep in touch, because obviously I left the stall, and then a couple of years later I was like, do you know what, I'll try and get in touch with him again. So I contacted him on LinkedIn, and yeah, and he's been so helpful, and you know, offered me this work, and it's just a really good thing to have going on.
Yeah, it's fantastic experience. Now, what do your duties entail?
It's just, well, what do? I do a lot of transcribing of interviews with the women. I sometimes attend the interviews with him. I write letters before action. So that's just setting out the details of the claim. What else? Just general admin stuff for him if he needs it. Just your general paralegal duties, really.
But I guess that gives you some insight on the practical workings of the law.
Yeah.
It gives you an opportunity to step back and reflect and apply what we do learn in class or the theory to the actual practice. Now, I know on the bar course, we get exposed to the practical aspect of it, but there is nothing like actually knowing that you're assisting someone who's real, other than, you know, a fictitious scenario. There seems to be some additional responsibility, and you want to do your best. So I think that that's really helpful, and that's going to be superb to add to your applications, especially for pupillage.
Yeah, hopefully. And it's really interesting stuff, and it's nice. And I suppose this is one of the reasons as well why I decided to pursue law, because, you know, while I was working in the financial services, yeah, it's all very well, but are you really doing anything that matters? And I think when you've got, and I know it's a bit cliche, but I think that if you feel like you're actually making a difference and helping someone out, I think it's just a nice thing.
And that's a good note, a very positive note for us to end today's episode. Thank you very much for sparing the time to come on to the channel, Jules. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no worries.
Yep.
I enjoyed it too.
And I'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Everyone else, I'll see you on the next video. Bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.